Yeah, what's up? I just want to say, you know, education is the tool to that enables people to break free from shackles of not just poverty, I mean, maybe poverty, but the shackles of social expectations. Yeah, it gives you, it equips you with what you need to go against, any social expectations of society, your friends, your family, your peers in the industry. And it may not produce something that's necessarily unique, but what it does give you is a depth. And this, it's so funny, ironically, as things have gotten better in terms of technological advancements, the yes, you need to be technologically savvy, but that it's kind of like being technologically literate. I wouldn't consider it education in the sense that I was talking about earlier, but it's so funny because as technology has evolved, the need for education has actually gone down because you can make money in different ways now. You don't need to get, like, for example, your classical now it's classical, right? It's not classical, it's still currently existing, like the modern school system, but it has actually made it so that, like, the schooling system or education as we know it is not as necessary as it used to be because you can still make money in other ways. You don't have to get a degree or go the conventional route, which is, get a degree, get a job. Now, and that's really funny. I find that to be really funny because it's taken education for us, and educated people, for us to get to a level where education isn't really 100% necessary if you want to make a living. So, for example, a lot of people make a living doing content creation. A lot of people make a living selling things online, like e-commerce and stuff. And they both require skill sets which you could learn, but it isn't conferred via traditional education. So, but I will say this, that, like I said before, it gives people a depth. Education gives people a depth. Now, what value is there in that depth? If I were to ask you, would you rather live in a society that is, as we understand education to be, that does have that basic level of each individual has like a basic level of education attainment, and a society that doesn't, which one would you pick? I would pick the first one. I would pick the former, right? So because such a society would probably be better. Also, the people there would be more interesting, I mean, interesting people, man. You barely meet any, to be honest. Like, fuck me. And no, doing something creative doesn't make you interesting. I mean, what makes a person interesting, I'd say, is a collection of life experiences. They wouldn't necessarily have to be educated, but I think education would help as long as they have that depth somehow. Education gives you that depth, but the depth isn't the only way. I mean, isn't the only way you can get that depth. So the people, say for example, just because they're doing something creative and they're educated doesn't mean that they will be interesting. It's just it might have some, like, might be some, like, it's definitely a factor, right? Like, how big of a factor, I don't know. But like, I met a filmmaker recently, and yeah, it was boring as fuck, dude, honestly. I mean, honestly, man, like, but you know what? He might make great movies or videos. I don't know. I never saw any one of his videos. And, well, the point is that I believe education does produce more interesting people. It's a big factor. But you could even say the opposite. But again, like, okay, so I'm not talking about education. Like, I have to really clarify here, because there's two types of education, right? There's like the conventional education system, which is like going through school, and there's education, which is what I believe it to be, which I've kind of used interchangeably in this video. But what I mean is, yes, you have what you learned in school, and after school's over, what do you learn? That bit's education. Like, what are you reading after school's over? Are you reading novels? That could be considered education, because in reading novels and like fiction, it improves your empathy. So it's a part of, I consider that to be a part of someone's education. But this, you know, coming back to what I said, despite me claiming that education makes people interesting, I said that education, like, I haven't met a lot of interesting people. Why is that? So the reason is because, yes, we all go through school, but what are people learning once school ends, once they become adults, right? Like, a lot of people stop learning things, and that makes them really uninteresting. But there are some people who, they don't just do interesting things, but they may have done interesting things, but they seem to be so knowledgeable about everything, you know? I guess reading the news is like one, reading the news is like one. Staying on top of current affairs is something that I consider is what makes a person interesting. I guess people having different experience than I have is also what I consider interesting. And people who do more than, people who are like multifaceted. So people who are not one-dimensional, right? That's what I consider interesting. And I do believe that the more educated you are in the way that I described it, I believe the less one-dimensional you will be. Let me see if I can give some examples. So if you read, and you read a lot, and you read on different topics, you might want to try different things. If you try different things, suddenly you're more interesting than everyone else who basically sticks to their routine, what they know, stuff like that. So how the fuck is it 10 minutes already? Every time I make one of these videos, I don't know. Anyways, all right, I'll keep it short. If you were to take a look at someone's life, the level of information that they receive, the graph would be something. Okay, so if this is the y-axis is amount of information and the x-axis is time, you'd see that it'd be like this. Okay, so this is the entire x-axis. So starting from here, you're young, you're learning a lot, you're learning a lot, you're learning a lot, you're learning a lot, you're learning a lot. And then as you go through like your early adulthood, it just kind of plateaus. So the y-axis, let me redefine it. It's like the total amount of information, or I would say the total amount of information based on unique, how do I define this? Unique areas, unique areas, no. Different areas. The amount of information in different areas. Yeah, so in school you're learning science, languages, math, humanities, stuff like that. And so the amount of information from different areas is quite a lot, right? But then as you reach adulthood, you pick a major, and your major eventually just amount of information from new areas, it kind of drops, and the total amount of information grows, but the amount of information from new areas drops. And then as you go through your life, in your career, typically people stick with one thing, and the amount of information that they know also, like, the total amount increases, but the amount of unique information that they know. So for example, you don't always need to be learning something new to do your job. So the total amount of information increases, but the amount of unique information, like, kind of stays the same, and plateaus. And the amount of different areas of information, like different types, it's like also like less than what it was before, as when you were like still in school, and it also like plateaus. It stays the same for most of your life. But for interesting people, they are more knowledgeable in a greater number of areas than average. And knowing something is just 50% of the deal. What makes a person really interesting is if they somehow act on it. You know what I mean? So I believe that education doesn't end at school, doesn't stop with school, and how educated a person is predominantly, for me, how I define it, and this is not the conventional definition, is predominantly how much they've learned outside of school, after school. And not learn, but you can also say read. I mean, how else are you gonna fucking learn? You need to read. But I count novels as that, like learning. How much they've read after school, and has it made them multifaceted in terms of their knowledge and also what they spend their time on. So I guess to close it off, I would say, I guess where I'm getting at is back to this Renaissance era in Europe, where you had these inventors who were capable of quite a lot of different things, math, the arts, stuff like that. I think they were onto something. They're kind of right. Because what makes someone interesting is if they can subvert your expectation of who you thought they were. So if I were to meet a researcher today, like a researcher, I was watching a talk earlier by an AI researcher, I say, okay, fine, the guy's really smart. He's no doubt educated. But all he talks about is AI. For me, that would grow boring pretty quickly. Like, is he an interesting guy? After a while, he wouldn't be. But then what's the goal in life? Is the goal in life to be interesting? Or what is it? It's just to follow your passions, right? And here again, I come back to square one, which is that the more educated you are, by my definition, which is you read after your school ends, the more passions you're likely to develop. So I believe that reading more after school, doesn't matter what, if you truly do read more, you would stumble across different things and you would do different things. And that's what makes a person interesting. So I date these women, and there is no unpredictability there. They're all really predictable. Do I want unpredictability? I want some excitement. But am I an unpredictable person? I mean, emotionally, I hope to be stable, but I might not be. But it's not unpredictable in terms of behavior. It's, again, it's called interesting, where they sort of, the person opposite to you sort of is more than what you thought they were, is capable of more. Because I'm going to tell you, I may have said this in one of my older videos, but specialization has made morons out of us all. Like, why is it that some people can do more? Right? And I promise you this, if you put down your phone, just try for a day. I know it's unthinkable, but if you just put it down, your mind will start wandering and should be like, I should do this, I should do that, I should do this, I should do that. Maybe that's what all of us really need, just to get bored alone with our thoughts. Maybe it would all become a bit more interesting. Who knows? Alright, ciao.